Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about one of the big ones, brought together from various artists and masterminded by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Today we're going to be talking about the Hamilton Mixtape. But first, let me talk about one of my biggest mistakes last year, or at least one that has weighed on my conscience pretty heavily, and that is I didn't talk about Hamilton. Oh, I considered it a lot, maybe even reviewing it. I like hip-hop, I like musical theater, I like Lin-Manuel Miranda. I might not have loved his debut musical In the Heights, but it had a lot of charm and potential. So when he took the world by storm in 2015 with his musical chronicling the fascinating and tumultuous life of Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, for some reason I didn't cover it. I don't really remember what my reasoning was for that either. The musical, while having its flaws in pacing and historical context, it is indeed pretty awesome, with some of the most immediately catchy songs that you'll ever hear. And hell, I even knew one of the performers, Daveed Diggs from his band Clipping. I had an obvious inroad to talk about Hamilton. And yet, even the fact that I didn't cover it, it became the sort of Broadway crossover into pop culture that you so rarely see these days. Forget that it cleaned up at the Tony Awards and at the Grammys. It was the sort of show where you'd probably have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting tickets these days. And as such, the vast majority of us made do with the soundtrack, which wound up on a surprising number of year-end lists from professional critics, and as of now has crossed over 1 billion streams on Spotify, which does say a lot in terms of how much it's permeated popular culture. Now, would it have landed on my year-end list? Well, it would have had a serious shot for it, and that is saying a lot, especially considering how strong 2015 was, especially for hip-hop. But then we all got word about the mixtape, and if you've seen the list of huge names that have signed on for it, it's more than a little bit mind-blowing. I would have just gotten the mixtape for Usher covering Wait For It. That's just perfect casting if you ask me. But then you have Black Thought, Busta Rhymes, Joel Ortiz, and Nate Ruess doing My Shot, Kelly Clarkson doing It's Quiet Uptown, John Legend doing History Has His Eyes on You, Chance the Rapper doing Dear Theodosia, Regina Spektor and Ben Folds also doing Dear Theodosia, Ashanti doing Helpless, which is such an obvious choice, it's not even funny there, Nas, Dave East, Lin-Manuel Miranda himself, and Aloe Black working on Wrote My Way Out, Common and Ingrid Michaelson handling Who Tells Your Story with The Roots, and The Roots are all over this project. And then you add them to a bonus track like Congratulations with Dessa behind it. You might as well give this project a spot on my year-end list right now. I was primed to love this, and that meant I also came in with my highest of expectations. I really wanted to love this and for it to be really good. So, did the Hamilton mixtape pay that off? Well, okay. Let me start off with this. The closest comparison that I could make to the Hamilton mixtape in 2016 probably something along the lines of Kendrick Lamar's Untitled Unmastered, in that while there are plenty of moments of genius, it does not really have the same cohesion and power as the best of the original article. Pimp a Butterfly is not Untitled Unmastered, vice versa, and the Hamilton mixtape is not Hamilton. Now, there are brilliant moments that makes this project worthwhile right out of the gate, but there are also a fair share of awkward experiments and a few outright misfires. It's also very much for Hamilton fans only, something I do think is to this project's detriment. Beyond some really excellent songs, you're not going to be really able to follow the plot line like in the original Broadway soundtrack. So you're going to figure out this Hamilton thing just off of this. It will not have the same impact and you'll probably end up getting lost. Now that said, I can see this having some mass appeal, especially to Hamilton fans. Hell, it went to #1 on the Billboard 200, and there might even be some crossover songs of Billboard Breakdown tomorrow. You never know, which, if you know anything about Broadway, you know how rare that is, even nowadays. But for context, this is not a straight covers album. Oh, for sure there are some covers, but there's also demos and leftovers that were cut before Broadway, remixes of existing songs that can very liberally stretch the overall context, and that's before we get songs where a fraction of the instrumental is just blown up into an entirely different song that might even have the barest connection to Hamilton, even thematically. And as such, you end up gravitating more to performances rather than a narrative arc. And make no mistake, you can tell that a lot of people, they wanted to bring their A-game here to be a part of this. Sure, Usher covering Wait For It, it's obvious, but it's also the best that he's done all year, probably since Good Kisser even. He's damn near perfect fit for this song. I knew I was gonna love this. And you knew that Miguel and Queen Latifah were gonna kill their respective parts on Satisfied, but Sia has not sounded this good and poised probably since her indie days. Alicia Keys, she sounded good and that would be enough, but she's also stuck following It's Quiet Uptown, covered by Kelly Clarkson, and it's the best thing Kelly Clarkson's done since My Life Would Suck Without You in 2009. It's a jaw-droppingly beautiful performance. Andra Day might be a frustrating performer for me as a whole in 2016, but she kills Burn with a lot of raw intensity that I'm not even sure the original managed to capture. But she's also following Jill Scott doing Say Yes to This, better than that song has any right to be. And then Dessa proving with congratulations why she's in my all-time top 5. Then you got John Legend taking the interlude History Has His Eyes on You and turning it into a flat-out gospel song that's absolutely stunning. And sure, Regina Spektor and Ben Folds, they sound good doing Dear Theodosia, but then you get the Reprise at the end of this album with Chance the Rapper and Francis and the Lights, and it's one of the best things that Chance the Rapper that he's ever done. Period. Chance is an emotive MC, but the subtle complexities in his delivery on this song puts him in an entirely different weight class as a performer. It's absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful song. Of course, before we get to some of the more experimental pieces here, we do need to talk about the misfires, and there are a few. Probably the least notable of them is Ashanti's version of Helpless. Yeah, she sounds good, and even Ja Rule, of all people, coming in to handle the male vocals, it's about as ridiculous as he's always been, and it's not terrible, honestly. It's not a bad song, but it's also clear why they put an interlude between her and Jill Scott. She's really outclassed on this project. Unfortunately, she's following a cover of You'll Be Back, sung by Jimmy Fallon. And Jonathan Groff, he is not. I get being friends with the Roots and Lin-Manuel Miranda, but Jimmy Fallon is one person they should have said no to, because Jimmy Fallon does not belong anywhere near a commercial release. And you can kind of tell with his delivery here. And on that topic, I get Lin-Manuel being intrigued by the experimental shift, but there's no excuse whatsoever to get Wiz Khalifa, of all people, to reinterpret and retitle the song Washington's By Your Side, which becomes just another song about money. Now, to be fair to Wiz Khalifa, he's rapping about as well as he ever has, and he's not a bad song here, but again, when you follow it 2 songs later with Common and Black Thought, not only does the recontextualization not fit with the rest of the themes of the album, even the loose ones, Wiz Khalifa is just out of his depth here, I'm sorry. Of course, this takes us to the greater experimentation of this album, the majority of which comes in the production and the added rap verses. In the former category, okay, as you would expect from a mixtape, it's nowhere near as lush or openly melodic as the original musical, and given that it's obviously making a play for pop airplay, it's been stripped back significantly in terms of backing vocals and instrumentation. And in a sense, that's a bit galling. Why not give Usher full backing support for Wait For It? He might not need it, but it's not gonna hurt him either. In contrast, It's Quiet Uptown is nearly smothered in the same reverb that choked Kelly Clarkson's last album, but it's also one of those rare cases where the melody is here, and emphasizing the greater loneliness of the song modernizes it in a way that connected far more starkly than I ever would have expected. It's a real highlight. Now, where that distance hurts the song comes on, that would be enough. It's already a lesser cut from the musical, but it's muted by the same production choices that frustrated me on Alicia Keys' last album. Hell, even Chance the Rapper, he brought auto-tune onto Dear Theodosia, and it still came across as more intimate than that. But where things get interesting are the new rap verses entitled in some of the remixes. And again, a lot of quality here. Black Thought and Joella Ortiz both hold their own on sharply modernized verses of My Shot, but again, if it wasn't for that A Tribe Called Quest album, Busta Rhymes would have stolen the show entirely here. And you can tell he's paying tribute back to Lin-Manuel, drawing influence from the Hercules Mulligan from Busta Rhymes. Similar case for Common's authoritative bars opposite Black Thought on Who Tells Your Story. If Lin-Manuel drew influence from George Washington from Common, he's trying to do his best to live up to that influence. I can respect that from Common, even if I do think Black Thought's verse is probably the best there. Outside of a few demos and outtakes, at which I'm a little bit disappointed that Lin-Manuel didn't get the rest of his castmates back to play their parts, he actually shows up to hold his own with an entirely original verse against Nas and Dave East on Wrote My Way Out. And outside of that Where the Wild Things Are #rap, it's actually a pretty solid verse. He's a decent MC. But the song that drew the most of my interest was Immigrants We Get the Job Done, which is led by Kanan, features Residente and Riz MC, both of whom get overshadowed by Snow the Product, stealing the entire song with some bilingual bars. She owns that track. Now, the sample from the musical that's interjected here, kind of clunky, kind of on the nose, but it reflects a niggling issue with this mixtape as a whole. Namely that it doesn't quite have the shades of ambiguity and political complexity that made the musical so damn fascinating and compelling for me. Oh, there are snippets of it. The fact they included Cabinet Battle 3 just a demo, that says a lot. But it also makes me wonder if this project could have had more impact beyond just individual moments if it was actually trying to say something more about the modern time. Now sure, mixtapes are often used as side projects or distractions. It's very clear that's what this is, but Lin-Manuel has to know that there are plenty of artists who have revitalized the mixtape in the past decade to say more, and I was hoping to get more of that complex ambiguity back. It would not be out of sorts here. Hell, the most glaring omission from the tape is that there is no interpolation or remix or even a cover of The Room Where It Happens. For as much as Hamilton makes a case for political compromise for the greater good, to make the deals that matter and then to win for that greater good down the road, the fact that the song's not even mentioned here? Okay, yeah, I get in the larger political context of the past month, but it's also not like Hamilton has ever shied away from politics, especially modern politics, even in the aftermath of the election. Reinterpreting that song for the modern era with a real political edge, that would take some impressive stones, but it's not like Lin-Manuel doesn't have the clout to get at this point to get some A-listers who would probably have to be real MCs, but they'd probably kill something cool here. Now granted, Lin-Manuel has promised a second tape at some point in the near future, but you could have easily cut the shaft from this one and just packaged it as one as a whole. I just think it's kind of a missed opportunity, and you have to wonder how much hype will be left behind Hamilton going forward. But at the end of the day, while I do think that there is a place for this mixtape, it's definitely a narrow one, as I don't get the impression that the intersection between the Hamilton fans and hip-hop heads is particularly wide. I don't expect Dead End Hip Hop to be covering this. Now, I fit within that narrow space, and I'm easily prepared to say this project is great, but that also comes with the strong sense of awareness of what this really is. It's leftovers. Now, they carry a lot of the same flavor, but some of the subtleties have been lost, and ultimately they can't quite satisfy in the same way the original did. Now that said, the original was pretty damn good to begin with, and with enough added spice to make the best parts taste as good as the second time around, I can respect that. In other words, while I'm giving this project a very light 8 out of 10, it's only recommended if you've heard the original Broadway performance version of Hamilton first. If you have, definitely check this one out. You'll probably enjoy the hell out of this. If not, well, check out the original Broadway cast version first. If you can tear away yourself from that at some point, definitely check this out a little bit later. I promise you, you won't regret it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I get the poll up here, and I'm really curious from Hamilton fans whether or not you think this mixtape stacks up, because I know how protective some musical theater types can be of the original cast version, speaking as someone who often is. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get more involved in my scheduling process or add albums to that schedule, I recommend you take a look at my Patreon. The link is right there, and I think you'd probably find something to enjoy. Getting involved with it a little bit more there. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.